Welcome to the Flashtronauts, where we explore the ever-expanding universe of flash fiction. Tonight we'll be reading Runt by Hillary Leftwich, first published in Nano in 2014. As you may notice, I'm by myself tonight. My co-pilot, Connie Malloy, is off on some solo missions of her own. She is writing a sci-fi novel, and she also hosts a wonderful interview series called The Burning Hearth. And I'll put the link to that in here in the description. But she holds multi-dimensional conversations with writers of speculative literature. It's a really great interview series. I've been enjoying it. She's just doing more and more, and so I encourage you to check that out. She's going to have a really special episode this month in February. So moving on, I'd like to let you know a little bit more about Hillary. Let me get the right screen up. Hillary Leftwich, she, her, is the author of Ghosts Are Just Strangers Who Know How to Knock, published by CCM in 2019 and Agape Editions in 2023. And Aura, Future Tense Books, 2022, and Blackstone Audio Publishing. She is the founder and owner of Alchemy Author Services and Writing Workshop and Community Coven. She teaches creative writing at the University of Denver, Colorado College, Lighthouse Writers for both adults and youth, and is a classroom facilitator for Art from Ashes, a local nonprofit that encourages creative empowerment through artistic expression for struggling youth. She focuses her writing on class struggle, single motherhood, trauma, mental illness, the supernatural, ritual, and the impact of neurological disease. She is an advocate for her son and others who live with epilepsy and other survivors of DV. She teaches tarot and tarot writing workshops, focusing on strengthening divination abilities and writing. She was born and raised in Colorado Springs and currently lives in Denver. Okay, there is a content warning here about animal abuse. I don't normally like to read about animal abuse, but Hillary, her writing, and why this story has stayed with me, because I read it when it was first published in Nano, and her writing is beautiful. Her writing is dark. Her writing can be violent, but there's such a vulnerability there, and it's not gratuitous. But I just want to give that out there that there is it's about animal abuse. Runt. In the kitchen, Lloyd is wringing its neck like a wet washcloth. Seconds ago, the cat stood smug on the kitchen counter. It hooked the bacon frying on the stove with its paw, meeting Lloyd's eyes with derision. Lloyd always considered cats to be pretentious. He kept the killing clean, painless. When he was 9, his father killed their dog with the exactness of a slaughterhouse worker. Tall and husky, he whipped around with the grace of a ballerina, squeezing the dog's throat, then snapping its neck. The steak it had stolen from his father's plate hung from its mouth like a limp meat rag. The dog lay between them like a sacrificial offering. Lloyd did not finish his supper that night. At first, he felt disgust. A coil of rancor unraveled in his gut, up his throat. He despised his father's weathered flannel shirts, how he never bothered to scrub the dirt from under his nails, the vein throbbing in his neck. His mother was a cowering animal. She played hide and seek with the light, blinking at the sun glaring outside the windows. Lloyd was forgotten, pushed away from her breast, the way an animal snubs the runt of the litter. They all lived in separate corners. Lloyd is massive now, 2 of his fathers smashed together. The cat, lifeless, peeks past him with a flaccid, dull look. Pleased, he steps over it and picks the bacon out of the pan, pushing the strips of fat belly into his mouth. His son gapes up at him, 2 soggy egg yolk eyes and a picture-perfect O mouth, begging for a piece of the kill. Lloyd wets his lips and finishes the last wave of curling fat, wiping his mouth clean with the back of his grease-smeared hands. That's Runt by Hillary Leftwich. I'll tell you what I really like about it and why it has stayed with me all these years. Mainly, her writing, the descriptions that she uses, uh, the wringing of the neck like a wet washcloth, how the cat hooked the bacon, how the father killed the dog with the exactness of a slaughterhouse worker, and how he was tall and husky, with the grace of a ballerina, how the dog lay between them like a sacrificial offering. And I love the description of his parents. The father has the weathered flannel shirts, and he never bothered to scrub the dirt from under his nails, the vein throbbing in his neck, and the mother a cowering animal, playing hide and seek with the light, and how Lloyd was forgotten. I'm practically reading the whole story again. He was forgotten, pushed away from her breast, the way an animal snubs the runt of the litter. They all lived in separate corners. I love how Lloyd is massive now, two of his fathers smashed together. And the bacon. I just love the bacon here. The last wave of curling fat. The last line. And how he wiped his mouth clean with the back of his grease smeared hands. It's so alive with description. They're just amazing. I love her descriptions. And all her stories are wonderful. This is just one example. I had to pick one, and this was it. So, but to talk more about the story itself, to me, it's a story about violence and learned violence and observed, and how it's passed down, how it can be passed down from generation to generation. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking um, on many levels. You know, when, and also how the violence is so kind of matter of fact. It was like it was like swatting a fly. Killing this cat was just like, as we might like swat a fly. Just, it's over, it's done, it's quick. You don't think about it. There's no remorse or emotion or anything there, which says so much. But yet, he didn't do it really to be torturing. It was a quick, clean, painless death. That just reminds me of like swatting a fly. And that's how his dad killed the dog, with the exactness of a slaughterhouse worker and the grace of a ballerina, squeezing and snapping the neck. It was just like, this is what they did. And then when you think, oh, this is what is really amazing about this story. And it's an implication in what so much flash fiction done well does have implication in it, or where they just hint at things, and it's subtle, which implication is subtle. But she says here, at first, this is after Lloyd saw his father kill the dog. At first, Lloyd felt disgust, a coil of rancor unraveled in his gut up his throat. But she doesn't say what happens after that. He first had this feeling of disgust and rancor. But then what? It didn't say. She moves on to a description of the parents and their life in the house. But then the next paragraph, she goes to where the present situation is, where Lloyd killed the cat, and now you see that his son is there. So he's repeating this violence in front of his own son in the same matter of fact way that his father did. So to me, as I'm reading that, I'm like, okay, at first he did feel disgust and a coil of rancor unraveled in his gut, and he despised his father's shirts, and he was left alone. And I like how she even compares them to animals as well. Um, but then, so she says at first he felt the disgust, the coil. I know I'm repeating myself, but you see what happened next without her stating what happened next. He's living in these conditions. He becomes his father, not only his father, but it's implied that he's even more than his father was. Not only physically, because he's like bigger than his dad, he's like two of his dad smashed together, but it's implied that he can take things up at even another level than his dad, probably in the violence that he's showing his son. It's like could be getting the violence could be getting worse from generation to generation. It, so I love that. I love that she says at first he felt disgust, but she doesn't tell you, and then he felt da 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 da, or then he was numbed by all of this. She doesn't say that, but you pick it up as a reader. Also, what I think is really interesting is while he's doing this, killing the cat in front of the sun, and he's eating that bacon, that beautiful descriptions about eating the bacon, or just the fat belly into his mouth. And I just love that whole thing. But the son, when she says his son gapes up at him, two soggy egg yolk eyes, I love that. And a picture perfect O mouth. I thought the son was shocked when I first read that he was like, oh, he killed the cat, And but no, he's begging for a piece of the bacon, for a piece of the kill. That's how I take that, for the bacon. And so it's like he's seen this behavior before, and he is also ingesting it and becoming just like his father and just like his grandfather and up beyond that. That's how I take that. That's how I interpret it. But I think it is multi-layered. You could look at it a couple of ways. That sentence, his son gapes up at him, two soggy egg yolk eyes and a picture perfect O mouth, begging for a piece of the kill. That's how I interpret that. But I do love the soggy egg yolk eyes. Just a great description. But it also shows, I don't know, two soggy egg yolk eyes. Maybe you could say that there's a little sensitivity there because soggy egg yolk eyes, maybe some eye watering going on. Maybe there is some feelings for the cat, but maybe he's got to, keep it in. He can't cry in front of his father. He can't show the emotions. That's what I'm picking up there. So he might have these intense emotions behind the eyes, um, but he's not going to show that in front of his father either. And here's another layer. The father, when he kills the dog over the steak, which is hanging out like a limp meat rag, and then the dog lays down like a sacrificial offering. That's a big line too. That says a lot. Um, Lloyd did not finish his supper that night, so I've got a feeling that that steak was just for the dad to eat, and he wasn't going to share it. It sound like Lloyd might have had something else, or maybe he did share the steak. I don't know. I got the feeling that he wasn't going to, and also, and maybe they didn't eat the steak because it was in the dog's mouth. But I was thinking about how Lloyd did not share the bacon with his son. That's when he finished up the last wave of curling fat and wiped his mouth clean with the back of his grease-smeared hand. And the grease-smeared hand goes back, and you can look. It made me think of the father's dirty nails. I'm just like, oh, he became his father. But he probably didn't want to become, but he did ultimately. And also, he was pushed away by his mother. So even though it is a hard read on some levels, it's such a wonderful read. It's that, oh gosh, it's such a hard subject matter, but she's done such a wonderful job with with it that I just love it. I just love it. It's one that I think about a lot. A lot. Thank you, Hillary, for writing this because I could just read it over and over and see more each time. So that's Runt. And here's her book. It's a different cover now. It's been reissued, republished. So I always ask the authors a few questions. And I did ask Hillary, what is your greatest challenge as a writer? And she said, my greatest challenge is the sometimes creeping contrast of really hating writing sometimes, not the act itself or what I produce, with all the pressure and wondering about the end result. The challenge lies in my own mind, whether to keep working on a project or ditch it or move it to the back burner, to focus on one project at a time, even though another one calls me to pay attention to it. Writing is also an energy drainer. No matter how into a writing project we are, it drains us, no doubt. So it's a careful balance of energy and commitment all the time. That's so true. I feel that. I also feel like writing, I love to write, of course I do. Um, but sometimes it feels like homework, like I always have this homework to do, but it's in a subject that I love, but it's still kind of homework. So you're always thinking in your back of your mind, or at least I do, like during the day, when am I going to do my homework? When am I going to be able to get to it? For inspiration and guidance, these are the writers she turns to, and I do apologize. My pronunciation is probably not correct on some of these. Stephen Dunn, Khadijah Queen, Matthias Folina, Byron Ospas, Ekusue Ukoto, A. Ogawa, Sarah Shant, Chip Livingston, Kathy Fish, Lucia Berlin, and Hillary's students who inspire her every day, her writing students. So I also asked, what was the writing process for Runt? And she said, Runt is a hard one to talk about, I imagine. It's a story I wrote based on an incident with my son's biological father. I wanted to spotlight generational abuse and how violence is a learned act. Well, she did. I wrote it specifically to be published in Nanofiction, one of my favorite online journals, now gone under, mine too. And it was my first publication, so there is a happy memory associated with it. That is amazing. That was her first publication. It's just a wonderful story, just amazing. And she does continue to do amazing work. So please check her out when you can. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Flashtronauts. And it's been a while since I've done an episode, and I always say I'm going to do them more regularly, and I do want to. My heart is to do it, but it's not easy for me to do these. It's not like I really like being in front of the camera. I don't. I like to be reading. I like to be writing, but I do this because I want to highlight my favorite writers and my favorite stories, and to get flash fiction out there to the world, because I didn't see a whole lot going on YouTube as far as flash fiction. There might be more than I realized, but there's a lot of podcasts. But I thought YouTube needed some more, so that's why I'm doing this, and I'm hoping to get more comfortable, do it more often, get better, expand, eventually maybe have the authors on themselves, and so it's not just me. But as you can tell, I'm very low tech, so I'm still learning how to do all this. But saying all that, I want to do more episodes, and I hope that I can, and I hope that life doesn't get in the way like it did this past year for me, and also to realize that I don't have to be perfect into doing this, into what I say, and I know my tongue gets twisted a lot, and I get nervous, and things don't sound right, and I ramble like I am right now. But in saying so, I hope to be doing these more regularly. So I really appreciate you who do tune in and hang in with me for this time, and that you help support me and keep, sharing it with other people. So it does mean a lot to me, and I appreciate you. So until next time, may the flash be with you. Thanks.